your toes. Now with your left hand, reach out and grab your nose. Say yeah, do a high five with your friend. Up high, down low, too slow, let's go. Stomp your feet, jump up and down, clap your hands and turn around.
Hey everybody, welcome to Bake Me Happy. Today we are doing babka. I had opened up my menu and allowed my customers to make some suggestions of what they would like me to bake, and one of them suggested chocolate babka, and I had no clue what a babka was. So after Googling it, it is evidently a braided bread that has chocolate in it or nuts. There's different varieties of it, but it originated in Poland and Ukraine in the 1800s, and it's named after the grandmas of that time. So we're gonna try it. Never done it before. I Googled a bunch of recipes and looked at a bunch of YouTube videos. The recipes all seem to be the same, but there's different ways that it was prepared, so I kind of took little bits and pieces of what I thought might work for me. We're going to do a test loaf today and see how it turns out before I do the main event for my customers. So stay tuned. Let the babka festivities begin. Like, share, subscribe, and here we go. Let's do it. Okay, so first we are going to prepare the bread. And what I've got here is 540 grams of bread flour. I have seen several videos where some say don't use bread flour, use all-purpose, and some say use bread flour. So this practice round, I'm going to try bread flour, see how it turns out. I've added 2¼ teaspoons of instant yeast. You can use instant yeast or fast-acting yeast. And I've added a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. And then I'm going to whisk all this together. And then I'm going to attach my dough hook. And I've taken 4 large eggs at room temperature, a 1/2 cup of whole milk at room temperature, 1½ teaspoons of kosher salt. And I was a little worried about this because I was always worried I'm going to oversalt something, but it ended up, kosher salt worked fine. It didn't taste salty at all. And then 10 tablespoons of unsalted butter at room temperature. So here, using my dough hook, I'm going to set the speed on low. And I'm going to start adding the wet ingredients. So here I'm adding the whole milk, and then I'll add the eggs one at a time. The goal here is to get all of the flour incorporated into the wet so you don't see any dry flour in the batter at all. And then I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla paste. I've started using vanilla paste because I've noticed that it's really enhancing my baked goods. I make my own vanilla and use that all the time, and that works well. But the vanilla paste really takes it to the next level, especially if you're making something that's vanilla flavored. The vanilla paste really brings the flavor to the next level. So I'm using a teaspoon here. Some recipes didn't call for it, some did. I decided to go ahead and try it. I'm going to be scraping down the sides of the bowl because you see there's a lot of dry flour there just to get it down into the batter. And I want this to look like a nice soft dough that I can pull out and work with. So this probably is going to take a couple minutes. I want to say this took me about 3 minutes to get it to where I needed it to be. We're forming gluten, giving it a nice, structure to help hold it together when it's baking, and so you don't have to do any hand kneading or anything, especially if you have a dough hook with the KitchenAid. I use that all the time. I never hand knead anymore. When this is done, it's going to look kind of like it's not easy to handle, but when you go to pull it out, it's really easy to handle and take off of this dough hook. So it's starting to get combined. It's getting more and more of that dry flour out. So remember, we don't want to see any dry flour. We want it all incorporated into this dough. And you can see it's pulling away from the sides. So we're continuing to mix, and I'm going to speed this up a little bit so you don't have to watch this, but it takes about a couple minutes to get it to where all the flour's incorporated. And then I'm going to start adding the butter slowly. So I have 10 tablespoons of room temperature butter that I've cut up into cubes, and I'm just going to start dropping it in and letting it incorporate. So this does take a few minutes. And then I sped it up to about a medium-high speed while I've been doing this. So we'll just speed this up a little bit and get to where the dough looks like it's coming together. I'm going to be scraping down the sides some more because some butter will get stuck on the side, so I wanted to get it into the dough. But I usually let this go about 8 minutes while I'm putting the butter in. Again, we're forming gluten to help with the structure of the bread. Adding more butter. This isn't difficult to make, just has some steps because the bread's gonna, um, or the dough's gonna be in the refrigerator for overnight. They say a minimum of 2 hours, but it's best to keep it in overnight, covered, and then it's ready to put together. So here you can see bread's coming together, the butter's all incorporated. So I'm getting ready to stop, and we're going to put this into an oiled bowl. I used a glass bowl. Scraping it down some more, make sure everything's incorporated. But you can tell it looks like it's not going to be able to handle it on the bottom, but it really is easy to handle at this point. And then here I'm getting ready to remove it from the bowl so you can see it comes off the dough hook really easily. I just have a bench scraper that I'm removing it from the sides of the bowl. I took a glass bowl and I oiled it really well, a little too well. When I put this in, I realized I put too much oil in it. I didn't realize it dripped down and accumulated on the bottom, so I ended up kind of pulling this out of the bowl and pouring some of that off, but it didn't hurt anything. As soon as I dropped this in, I started seeing the oil accumulate around the sides. See how it's, yeah, that's way too much oil, so dump some of it out. Still felt like there was too much in there, so I just took it out and wiped it with a paper towel. Put it back in, and then I'm going to cover it with a towel and let it rest for about an hour. And after the hour's up, I cover it with plastic wrap and stick it in the fridge for overnight. So it is the next morning, and before we pull the dough out of the fridge to roll out, we need to prepare our filling because this needs to sit and set for an hour after we make it. Otherwise, it's too runny and too hot to apply to the dough. So I've taken half a cup of heavy cream. I've added half a cup of unsalted butter cubed, and then I am going to cook this over a medium low heat until the butter's melted and then it becomes steamy. So it's steaming and I have added the chocolate and I'm gonna mix it in until it's all melted. And I didn't wait until it was entirely melted. I turned the heat off right before that just so I didn't want to burn it. So you can see I've taken it off the heat here, mixing it, make sure it's all melted. So now I am going to whisk in 3/4 cup of powdered sugar and 1/3 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder. I use the Dutch process kind. And then I'm going to whisk it all together till it's all incorporated. And then I'm just going to transfer this into a bowl and just put it to the side. Let it sit out for about an hour. Mine took a little bit longer to cool off, but when it cools off, it becomes thick and it's easy to spread across the dough. If you begin to use it and it ends up being too thick, then just mix it up with your spatula really well and it'll loosen up. Okay, so we pulled the dough out of the refrigerator and you can see that it got a pretty decent rise on it. A lot of the videos I've seen, it showed, it rose a little bit, but I was pretty pleased with this. So this is going to make 2 loaves. So I'm going to cut this in half and put the unused half back into the bowl and cover it. And after I get done rolling the first half out, I'll do the second half. So I just use a bench scraper, cut it in half. And before I start rolling out, I'm going to take a little bit of bench flour, which is I just took a little bit of all-purpose flour, and I'm going to lightly flour my surface. Um, from what I've seen, you don't want to do a really good flouring of the surface. I'm not used to doing that anyways because I don't want my baked good to dry out, but also you want some kind of tension on your surface when you're putting the filling in so the dough doesn't stretch. This dough, even though it came right out of the refrigerator, is really easy to roll out. I floured my rolling pin, and I'm going to roll this into a 12 by 16 rectangle, as good as a rectangle I can get. I'm going to keep the 12-inch side towards me, and because that's the way you're going to roll it up, roll it the length of the long way. So I just have my measuring stick. So I have my sort of triangle going on here. I'm going to do one last measurement. And then I'm going to take my filling, half of my filling, and I'm going to use an offset spatula I use an offset spatula for everything, for ice and cakes, etc. It just makes it a lot easier. And we're going to apply the filling to the top. And you can see it's set pretty well. Some videos I saw it was really thick, but this was very manageable. Didn't ooze out the sides. And so I'm going to start covering it with half of it. I want to cover the whole entire dough except for the top half inch of it. On this dough, I'm going to leave the top half inch not iced, and then on this second dough, you'll see that I reversed it to the bottom because I usually like rolling from away from me towards me. It's just a lot easier for me. So your personal preference. If you want to roll from away from you towards you, then ice the top, leave the bottom half inch without any filling, and then vice versa, like this, where I'm going to roll away from me. I covered the whole thing to the bottom and just left the top half inch without any filling. And the dough stains still very easy to ice. Add the filling too. And I didn't goop this on really thick. You know, it was enough where I didn't see the dough, like you can here in the center where I just covered that up. Um, because I didn't want it to be real goopy in the center. So just cover it enough to where you don't see the dough underneath, but not too thick where it's all going to get all squishy and mushy when you roll it. So I'm going to bring this edge up. I've already dampened it. And then I'm just going to pinch the seam to the body of the dough just to seal it up and keep it from popping open. This dough's easy to handle, but it does stretch very easily. So when you do pick it up to move it around, you want to kind of support it with both your hands so it doesn't stretch out too far. So I'm going to take a cutting board, put this on there because this is, I picked it up not realizing how bad it stretched, and so it did stretch out a little bit, but it turned out fine. So on this loaf, I'm going to take a serrated knife that I have sprayed with cooking spray. And you don't want to saw it because you want to see your layers in there. So I'm going to spray it, and actually this must be the second video, unless that is my serrated knife. Oh well, we'll see. But you just take it straight down the middle, and I'm trying not to saw. And I had to do this a couple times, but every time before I would do it again, I would clean my knife off so I didn't smear anything. And yes, that is my serrated knife, so this is the first loaf. And I didn't get quite down to the bottom, so I'm gonna clean my knife off and go down it again carefully. Trying to cut exactly where I'd cut before. Then we're just gonna turn it to where the layered side is up. Then we're gonna start braiding it, so I'm just making sure it's loose enough for me to lift over to. So I saw some people started braided from the top and all the way down, and then I saw a video where they just crisscrossed it in the center. So you're gonna see me do that here. So I crisscross it in the center, and then I just braid it from the center down and go one way. And then I just take it the opposite direction going up. And that was really easy to do. I didn't struggle. I didn't have one side braided more than the other. And then at this point, I'm going to take the ends and I'm going to seal them. And I was all excited I got to this point without tearing anything up. So here's my loaf pan. Mine's a 9 by 13, I think. I think you can use an 8 by 13, just a normal loaf pan. I sprayed it with vegetable spray and then just lined it one way with parchment and the other way with parchment. There's a way that you can fold the parchment and cut it and everything. It's just easier for me to do it this way. And then I stick it in carefully, get it all in there, and then I tap it just to make sure that it's all down in there. And if you watch my sourdough video, you know I love these little shower caps you can get off Amazon because you can cover anything with it. Small jars, large bowls. So here I'm going to cover this, and then we need to let this rise for an hour. So what I did is I set my oven onto the proof setting and just stuck it in there for an hour, and now I'm just wiping this down so we can start working on the second loaf. And I did the second loaf just a little bit differently. So I'm going to flour my surface with a little bit of flour. And then we're going to roll this into a 12 by 16 triangle. So I'm just going to speed this up because you saw me do this before. And then this time when I apply the filling, I'm going to leave the bottom ½ inch uncovered. So this filling recipe, I used every bit of it, and I wasn't stuck short on this one. That recipe truly will cover two 12 by 16s. So I'm rolling towards me. I just like doing this better towards me than away from me. But to each his own. Seal up the edge. And this time I'm using a different knife. I thought maybe this might be easier instead of a serrated, and it was a lot easier than using the serrated. One video I saw them use a serrated, one I saw them use just a regular knife like this. I have hex-clad knives and they work very well, but I did spray it with some of the vegetable spray. And I think the non-serrated knife worked a lot better. It cut cleaner through. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to separate it, have the layers facing up. And then we're going to take it and put half of it across, just make an X, and then just braid the bottom one way. Go opposite with the other. And then seal the ends. And then it's ready to put in the pan. So here you can see I'm supporting it well on one half with one hand and the other half on the other so it doesn't stretch. But stick it in here, and then I'm going to cover it with one of my shower caps, stick it in the oven, and we're going to let it proof. I think I said an hour. It can be an hour to an hour and a half. I think I let this go for like an hour and 45 minutes. So now I've taken it out of the oven, and you can see that they've risen quite a bit while they were in there. They were in there for an hour and 45 minutes. I placed a wire rack on a baking sheet and put these on top. One of the videos I saw said this helps with the circulation underneath and keeps it from scorching on the bottom. So I am going to put these in a 350-degree oven and let them bake for 30 minutes before I take them out and cover them with foil, and then put them in for another 30 minutes. So the babka is almost ready to come out of the oven, have about 15 more minutes. So what I did was took a half a cup of granulated sugar and then added a quarter cup of water. I've seen it done a 1-to-1. This one sounded a little bit better, so I did a 1-to-2. So I am just stirring this on medium heat until it becomes clear. There's no set temperature, you just want it to be clear. That's showing you that all the sugar's dissolved. And here it's nice and clear. So I'm ready to take it out of the oven, and then or take it off the stove, and then when our babka comes out of the oven, we're going to brush this all over the top. So here it's out of the oven. I remove the foil. I'm checking the temp. You want it between 200 and 205 degrees, and mine was perfect. You can also, if you don't have a thermometer, stick a toothpick in. It should come out clean, shouldn't feel doughy. And now I'm going to brush that sugar syrup all over. So I'm going to split that sugar syrup between both of these loaves and use the entire sugar syrup for both of these loaves. This soaks in, creates a nice crust on top, makes it shiny and pretty. And so after I am done completely covering this with the sugar syrup, I'm going to use all of this. So half of it's going on this loaf, the other half's going to go on the other loaf. Then I'm going to let these rest in the pan for 1 hour. And now all I need to do is grab the sides of this parchment and it slides right out. So this is after it's rested in those pans for an hour. And just carefully, I'm going to remove the parchment because they're still a little loose. They're warm still. You can see the bottom's cooked perfectly. And now I'm going to let them rest for another 2 hours. They say the minimum is 15 minutes, but they say the longer you let it rest, the stronger they are. So I'm going to let them rest for another 2 hours. So after resting for 2 hours, it's ready to cut into. Y'all, I have never made a babka, ate a babka, or even heard of a babka. So I was real hesitant about this because it uses dark chocolate, and I'm not a big dark chocolate fan. But let me tell you, I bit into this and it is so pillowy soft. And the dark chocolate doesn't hit you like you're eating a mouth of dark chocolate. It is sweetened just enough where it's pleasant. And it's the best bread I think I've ever eaten so far. So I highly recommend baking this. Um, it truly was easy. It just takes a long time because there's several steps. And it was just kind of fun braiding and watching it turn out. So I hope you enjoy the video. Again, please like, subscribe, and share, and we'll catch you on the next one.